hang up my headphones.
But Chris, you're not really leaving. We're just going to put a pin in this so you can circle back around to it someday.
There you go. I like that idea. We'll just put a pin in me. We'll hang my name badge. Will be permanently hung up there as a hopeful that I'll return. Is that the idea?
No, but for those of you watching on YouTube or just now watching, I just clicked the button. Sorry about that. I forgot. And I don't want that. Now it's making sound. Sorry. I forgot to start it, and then I forgot to mute it.
Whoops.
I'm discombobulated today. Sorry.
It's emotional.
That's what
Chris, you're wrecking the show.
But as I alluded to previously, Chris is he's got stuff. He's a dad. He's a worker. He got stuff to do. So
I do.
So he's leaving us, and and we don't bear him any ill will. Not too much, anyway.
Just a little.
Yeah. Just
a little guilt, stabbed in the upper left quadrant of my heart. Just a little.
But we appreciate it. I think most people listening don't realize how much effort it is to do a podcast. Week in and week out. It's actually harder than most people think, and he's done it for 5 years, and we appreciate it. And
it's a lot more of a time commitment than most people realize.
That is true.
So, and to definitely come in, I don't know what we do, 2 hours, 3 hours at least every Sunday, plus staying up current with all the news. It's tough. So.
Man, I remember those early shows. How are we going to get 30 minutes out of this?
Oh, jeez. Yeah, no kidding. The very beginning, when we were way back when, we had those very, very first shows, Mark. Who was the other guy with Tux? Not Tux. What was the other kid's name?
I don't know. We've blocked them from. They're dead to us. And in a month, I won't remember your name. So,
Oh. At least I get a month.
Yeah.
I'm all right with a month.
That was Josh Reitz.
That's it.
Yes.
Yeah, he had the tux for his icon.
Yeah, and I don't remember the girl's name. She was only on for 2 weeks. I don't remember her name. Sorry, girl, if you're listening.
Yeah, that was a pretty short one.
Anyway, let's talk about some just stuff. I watched today the Amazon Premiere preview. Is that what they call it? Premiere preview? Anyway, they put out a bunch of pilots, and you could vote on them and decide if you like pilot season. Yeah. I watched The Tick today, and then I went and checked the reviews, and it's right now got like 9,000 reviews with an average of 4.5. So you can be pretty sure that this is actually going to be made with that kind of numbers. But I won't be watching it. I just didn't like it at all. It wasn't funny.
Really?
It wasn't charming. I didn't enjoy it. So I was sad about that. I wanted to enjoy it.
Was it funny because it was?
Well, it was. You can tell they tried a little. Like, the Tick doesn't come off as funny. He comes off as weird.
Yeah.
So the Tick has to be funny for the show to work. And the one that came out, I know Mark, you didn't like it.
I loved Patrick Warburton, but he was all I liked about it.
Yeah, but even he was funny, and the Tick was funny, and so they've made it a lot more realistic. As much as you can have a guy who dresses like a Tick and can jump 50 feet be realistic, but they've made the show more realistic, and so it doesn't work with the Tick.
It was written by Ben Edlund, right? Who's been the writer of the Tick for as long as there's been a Tick. And he executive produced it, which executive producing could be anything from somebody bought him a coffee one day to who was on set every day and got script approval. So that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but at least it had his seal of approval, or maybe he just wanted to cash a check after so long. But it didn't feel like the Tick. It just didn't feel like it. They tried to make it gritty, which is weird. And it was
Since when's the Tick gritty?
Yeah, it was violent, and there was foul language, not things, again, that fortunately my kids weren't in the room, but I certainly wasn't expecting that out of the Tick at all. Every
Right.
other iteration of the Tick has been family friendly, and this time it wasn't. So I was really maybe that was what disappointed me, is the tone was so very different. But also it just wasn't as funny. I didn't laugh. Well, I laughed maybe once or twice in the 20 minutes, however long it was. I don't even know. The whole thing, I laughed a couple of times. Whereas, in the cartoon and even the Patrick Warburton one, I would laugh, really, really hard at least 2 or 3 times. This one, it was once. It was a chuckle. Hey, that was kind of cute. So, hey, disappointing.
Yeah, they were going after. If you took the Tick and set him in like the Daredevil universe, that's and the Tick is not Daredevil, and so they shouldn't have. But they're like, let's make the Tick Daredevil, and
I could actually see how that could work if you have this one totally deluded psychotic character in the real world, and I think that's what they were going for. Instead of having this alternate world of just weird people and Tick being one of the weird people, he was the one weird guy in the normal world. So I think that's what they were going for, and it lost the charm. The charm of the Tick was the fact that he was maybe not even the most weird of all the weird people.
Right.
I mean, when your villain is Chippendale Chairface, I mean that's pretty out there. In this case, it was it just didn't ring true to me.
Me either.
All right. So enough about that.
It's still on my list to watch just because I want to see it.
Yeah, and I hope I haven't soured it for you, because you may like it in spite of my ramblings, and that's fine. It's okay for you to like it. I don't want anybody to listen to this. If you were gonna watch it, go ahead and watch it. Don't let me turn you off. But it wasn't for me. It was I'm sure everybody knows this guy as something else, but the character who played the Tick was Stanley from the movie Couples Retreat, which I think is one of the funniest bit characters ever put on film, and he was brilliant. But as the Tick, wasted.
That's too bad.
Another thing, I managed to unload more crap I didn't want thanks to Craigslist, so I'm really enjoying Craigslist as a way of unloading crap I don't want.
So are you selling it for really cheap or just giving it away?
Just giving it away. I probably could have sold it, but then you get people having expectations, right? Once you put a price tag, even if the price is $1, people are like, well, this may not be a good thing. I'm going to test this, and if it breaks, they want to come. No, you give something away, that takes away any ability to complain or care. So that's my philosophy.
That's true.
And
I did the same thing. I said, free. What was it? $1 or free is what I put on like a bunch of stuff that I did when I moved, just because I didn't want that for the same reason. $1 or free, and you'd be surprised how many people said, "Here's your $1. I'll take it."
Yeah. So I gave away a 15-plus-year-old exercise bike that the electronics were fried in. I think one of my kids poured some water down it. It still kind of works, but you don't get the variable resistance, you don't get the heart readout, you don't get any of that stuff anymore. So I probably could have sold that for, I don't know, $50, but $50 isn't going to change my life. But then as soon as I put a $50 price tag on it, people have expectations. The guy who picked it up was like, he got on it, he tested it, he wrote it, said, none of this works. I said, no. He said, well, I guess I can't complain for free. Like, yeah, exactly. You can't complain for free. Load it up and get out of here.
Right.
And he loaded it up and took it away.
He did. I even helped disassemble it so he could put it into the back of his Toyota Camry. Why would you go to pick up an exercise bike if you drive a Toyota Camry? Why?
You are assuming brains in the greater population. Remember, if it were common sense, more people would have it.
But together, I put more effort into it than I wanted to. I mean, I gave it to him and then worked for him. So it was like negative effort at that point. But we disassembled it, at least in large pieces, and he managed to shove it in the back seat and made it work. So
okay, you didn't have to pay for it to be hauled away. That's all that matters.
When I moved a while back, I considered just leaving it there. Hey, free exercise bike. But no, somebody would have yelled at me about that.
I don't know. I didn't leave anything there.
That was there when I came in. I swear it was.
It was empty when I left. That's all I know.
Somebody must have broke in and put a 15-year-old exercise bike there.
One of those underground gyms.
There you go. What you could have done is done what they do in the college towns. They just put free and put it on the side of by the street and hang a little free tent on it. then just, hey, it's communal. It's community. Then it's
And that
you
may
know,
have
trying to
worked,
help the
but
community.
this is a neighborhood of 40 and 50 somethings. I don't know that it would have worked as well here.
Oh, well then, you just busted my bubble.
Anyway, so Seth, you want to briefly, because we've talked about it way too much, want to regale us in your latest exploits in Bitcoin mining?
Well, okay, no, I was actually mining. So there is an app. I'm sure there are many apps, but there's an actual Bitcoin mining app that you can mine on your phone. So I took one of an Android tablet that I bought last Christmas and haven't really used for anything. I fired that up and loaded it. And, in order to really get anything, you need at least gigahashes. And this was doing point kilohash. So, I mean, I let it run for a few hours and then because I joined a mining pool, I wasn't going to be. I knew enough to know this wouldn't do anything on my own. So I joined the slush mining pool, which was the first one ever apparently, and then I had it on and I just watched my statistics on slush, and you could tell occasionally it would do a block thing, but it was never enough to register it as on. So that's my foray into the actual. I'm doing some other cloud mining, but that was my foray into actually mining Bitcoin. So there's some blockchain out there that
You
forever I am a part of. So yeah. Anyway,
At least
yeah.
for a minute.
Well, no, because the strength of the blockchain is that it records every action. So
Sure.
I'm a part of that blockchain now for all eternity.
Yeah, it's another one of those places where I kick myself, because when I first heard about Bitcoin, with a regular desktop computer, you could expect to solve something every week or so. And if I had done that, and just turn it on, just thrown it on the computer downstairs that nobody pays any attention to, I could have thousands of dollars right now. But this is not a thing. I'm not even interested.
That's what I did too.
If you want to, now it's almost impossible to mine for a profit in America. You would have to have some type of solar power or wind power where you're not paying for the electricity, and somehow some place to keep it cool. So either the further north or further underground you were, and the rigs that will pay anything, they're actually not that expensive. You can get one set up for less than $2,000, but it would. I mean, compared to a new car or what people pay for their latest Apple device or a TV, that's not that bad. But it would take you roughly 2 years to make your money back if you weren't paying for electricity along the way. So
that's not even worth the effort in my book for that. At that point, you have to have a 2-year commitment just to make your money back on the thing you bought to make you money. That's almost as bad as the banking industry's interest rates. So,
well, if you
that's pretty tough.
If you live, like, say you lived in the Arctic Circle and could get internet out there, you could actually get a couple of these to heat your home because they're throwing off the heat, and then and I mean you would basically be contributing to global warming, but you would be getting paid to heat your house. Set up like a solar panel or something and do it during the summer when you got the 6 months of daylight. It could work.
I read an article last year sometime, it's been a while, about a mining operation that was going to set up in, I think it was Costa Rica, under a waterfall, because the waterfall would generate power and provide cooling.
Right.
So they were going to build a data center in the cave under the waterfall and let the waterfall do the thing. But the whole issue was getting connected to the blockchain. You can generate all that, but you're in a waterfall in Costa Rica. And that was the issue they were trying to resolve. I don't know if they ever figured it out.
Interesting.
So that's what we've resorted to. I mean, think about it. If you look at gold mining or diamond mining, people have to go to that extremes today, right? In King Solomon's times, thousands of years ago, they could just send a few slaves down into a hole and mine diamonds. But now they're major multi-billion-dollar operations. So Bitcoin mining intentionally is following that same path. You used to just be able to walk around and pick Bitcoins up off the ground. and now you have to have a multi-billion-dollar multi-year plan to get any. So I think
Sure.
it's interesting that the developers of it have so closely followed the real-world resource mining track.
It is interesting.
Yeah, so, what's the next cryptocurrency that we can jump on and get our money while it's easy?
Well, there can only be
Chances
so
are it's not
many,
gonna
right?
happen.
I mean,
I'm gonna say, by the time that we've run into it, it'll be too late.
yeah. I mean, there can't be. Can there? Can there be multiple, like dozens of competing cryptocurrencies? I think in order for it to work, there can only be a couple.
Well, I mean, today the answer to that question is no. But if more and more people use it, we're talking 6 billion people in the world, and I could see.
Well, there are 6 billion people, but how many global currencies are there? 5 or 6?
Yeah,
Well, I
there's
mean,
not many.
really, there's really only one. You can make a case maybe that the euro is almost a global currency, but the dollar is still the only, and it's only a de facto world currency. But
well, I could buy stuff in the U.S. with Japanese yen, with euro, with Canadian dollars. These are things that you could cross borders with. So that's why I'm calling it global.
Well, I mean, theoretically, you could do that with anything. You just got to find. Remember that currency is just a medium of exchange.
Right.
So because I don't want to walk around, with 100 computers to unload on suspecting people when I need stuff, I have the money. So,
I just keep hoping I can find somebody to unload these Liberian dollars I bought off of the TV.
There you go.
But so far it hasn't happened.
Let's just go back to precious stones and blocks of gold. We'll just haul that stuff around in our pockets.
Yeah.
That'll work.
And then just, everybody would have to have a scale in the back room, and you shave it off, and you got to make sure somebody's scales are accurate.
Yep.
And if for astute viewers, we'll notice that Seth is not where he normally is. Just listening, you wouldn't tell because he brought all his gear with him, and he's going to sound the same. But where are you, Seth? Where in the world is Seth Anderson?
I am in Lewes, Delaware, and interestingly, Lewes is spelled Lewes, which I thought was weird, but apparently it's not weird if you're in Delaware. I'm going to be working here this week, and they flew me up early, so I got a little earlier flight so I could drive here and be on the show. That's my dedication for y'all.
Seth rearranges travel plans for the show, people. That's a big deal.
I like it.
I don't quit when the going gets hard.
Oh, there's the daggers. They're starting already.
Yeah, some of us don't leave just because the wife complains a little bit. Some of us stick it out.
Although I got to be honest, if I ever had a wife and she said it to me on the show, y'all would never hear from me again. I would say, honey, can I tell them bye, or do you not even want me to say okay?
All right, and Chris, we'll get to your stuff in a minute because it's what you have here in the warm up is pretty much the topic. So we'll get there. Sure. But we have some listeners who want to speak to you. So we'll begin with Rick, who sends us an audio message, and he has this to say.
Hey guys, Rick Crouch from the chat room here. Couldn't let the command line Godfather slip away without thanking him for his work on the podcast over the years. I started listening to the podcast about episode 87 about 3 years ago when I was still really new to Linux, and I know that Chris's command line tips really helped me learn a lot more about Linux and have helped me use the system better, and have definitely been a big help. I'm a long way from Godfather status, but I'm definitely a lot farther along than I was when I started listening to the podcast, so thanks for that, Chris. I hope we see you back from time to time in a guest starring role, because you're definitely going to be missed. Take care of that family, because that's what's important. And guys, thanks for the podcast and for all that you do here on the new GeekRant.
Guys, remember when we used to be a Linux show and we talked about Linux stuff? Good times.
Oh yeah, good times.
I don't know. We haven't been a Linux show for a very long time. It's only recently that we quit claiming to be a Linux
show. So Rick got all DJ on us there. Got up in the the mic and had the old proximity effect working there, and he was, hey ladies, it was it's good stuff.
How you doing?
I had something I was going to say about that, but I've forgotten what it was. Anyway.
That's all right. I'll say, Rick, being in the command line is worth it. Definitely stick to it. What's funny is the fact that even PowerShell is coming to Linux. So even Microsoft has seen the light that being in the command line is a better place to be when writing your tools. But I do think it's funny that even Microsoft can't do it right, because even their new PowerShell can run out of memory, where the simple Bash shell can do things that PowerShell can't.
Well, 640K ought to be enough for anybody, right?
I see a world market for maybe 5 computers.
Yes. I remember now what I was going to say. I was telling somebody, I don't remember the context of it, that Chris was leaving the show, and they were, oh, well, that's too bad. And I was like, yeah, he's the guy people like. That's the problem. Of the three of us, he's the one people like. So I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to be completely unlikable now that the command line godfather is gone. Chris could say anything, murder any statement. He could come out here and threaten the president, and we'd get fan mail for him. Hey, Chris, keep up the good work. Sure like you. I mispronounce a syllable, and I get hate mail for a week. And Chris is the one people like, and he's leaving.
That's because I'm so lovable.
And we have never found out yet whether he wears pants. The mystery is yet to be solved.
And no one will know, because you guys only see me from the waist up.
Okay, moving on. David also says thanks and so long. First off, I'd like to say that I'm sad to hear that Chris is leaving the show. Without him, the trifecta will no longer be complete. Chris, you will be missed. Now, on to other things. I want to thank you guys for getting me into the tech field. Mark, because of your shows, I not only have my CompTIA A+ cert, I'm now working as a computer tech for a local computer repair shop. Because of the knowledge your shows have imbued me, I had the knowledge to go into my local college and pass the test. A quick shout out to Professor Messer for his help too. I'd love for an entire month based on networking, as I'd like to wire my house with Ethernet, but I have no clue where to start. Obviously, get the cable, wall jacks, and covers, as well as a fish tape, but how do I connect the router to and the Boris box? These answers and more next time on the GeekRant. But seriously, here's my vote for networking episode month. In an earlier show, you brought up that Microsoft has made a new alpha Skype for Linux. I think many members of the Linux community were wary because it had a lot less functionality than the current Skype for Linux, even less than the Electron wrapper for the web version. I myself was firmly in the skeptical camp, as Microsoft has always had a secret mantra of embrace, extend, extinguish. And while I'm still slightly skeptical, the fact that they've open-sourced PowerShell makes me slightly less so. Let's just hope it's not a never-ending alpha. I think that's all for me now, but I do wish Chris the best as he moves on to other things, and I hope that the dynamic duo of Seth and Mark will continue to be as good as it currently is. Best of luck, David.
Cool. Thanks, David.
Yeah, so that's one vote for the networking month we've received.
Well, we got a couple of others. I don't want to shoot them all at once, but yeah, at least 3 people like the idea. One of them's me, but that's okay.
Right.
And then lastly, Kirk responds to episode 248. Why Linux sucks, although I use it daily. Lack of hardware support. Can enable auto-scroll on the mouse, but only in browsers. Too much choice for desktop. Servers are basically dominated by Red Hat, and it's a family of distros. I prefer Manjaro, but it has unique hardware detection tools that have to be learned on top of Arch. More choice, but sometimes more guesswork. No good webcam drivers available for open source. Is that true? They may have to install Intel over AMD, despite the latter being considered more free. We shouldn't have to program drivers on our own for basic functions. I agree with Mark that Linux support for drivers is a self-defeating mechanism. They won't build it until people come. To Seth, former Axis and Allies player here, loved it. Both editions, even the original, worse than Mercator projection map. I don't know what that means. Dev/random, what if HTTPS is actually a nefarious organization that is stealing all the internet's data under the guise of encrypting it?
Ooh.
Wow, that was even more.
nefarious.
That wasn't tinfoil visor. That was full-on tinfoil tent.
Tinfoil body wrap and a tinfoil bunker underneath the tinfoil production facility. So yeah,
That's the kind of guy who has a go bag and Primacord wired all throughout his house. That's.
Okay, I don't have the Primacord, but I do have a go bag. Does that count for anything?
It means you've seen Jason Bourne too many times.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Depends on what the go bag's for.
Well, I have a networking bag and I have a guitar bag, so technically those are both go bags, I guess.
See?
Yeah. Well, yeah. What is your go bag for? So, okay, Mark. I just have one question. Oh, never mind.
Okay.
Well, no, because I was looking for what you were reading because I was looking after the David says things, and then I was like, as I scrolled back up, there it was. So, okay, I found it. Hey, I've been up for a very long time, and I got in about 10 minutes before the show started, and I'm very hungry. So
250 shows in, Seth is still figuring out how to read the notes.
Oh, I like it. Oh, it's awesome.
All right, so when I talked to Chris, and initially we thought Seth wasn't going to be here because of his travel plans, it was, what do you want your last show to be? And because he's that big a geek, he said, let's talk about D&D. So, Chris, go.
Well, before we start on the D&D totally, since we skipped over my warm-up, I want to say that I think I'm going slightly off the deep end. I'm buying the farm. There's a nice hug me jacket coming with the sleeves that's give me a nice good hug. Any other kind of phrases you guys want to put in there?
Rubber room.
Yeah. I'll have a nice round room to go sit in here soon. I'm going a little crazy with the whole D&D thing because I went from planning something that I thought was going to be short and sweet and, a couple of wham bams and out the door to a 3-day event. So my house is going, we're going to binge and purge for 30 days after this thing's done. And some of the things I've learned in this little endeavor is don't plan a 3-day event in 2 weeks because that's just craziness. Don't pay for a 3-day event in 2 weeks because it's a lot of expense that you don't realize until you start going through and going, oh, I need that, and I need that, and I need that, and oh, I need that, and tables and chairs and
wow,
swipe and swipe and swipe and swipe.
So what are you doing? I mean, are you doing like a 3-day marathon gaming session or what?
Well, originally when I signed up for this project, it was supposed to be a 4-hour 101 is how I originally pitched this. It was supposed to be for those that have never played D&D before, have heard about it, have seen it in the movies, but don't have any clue what it is. That's how I pitched this idea, because they had a 4-hour block on a Sunday that they didn't have anything planned for. And I was like, well, that's perfect. 4 hours would give me enough time to do a quick overview of what D&D is, what a character sheet is, how to build a character, and maybe do a 30, 40-minute dungeon run.
Right.
That's about perfect. Then I go down to find out how big the room is, how big of a, is there a screen? How many people is estimated to sit in the room? The usual things that a person doing a presentation would ask. And they said, well, are you tearing your booth down early to set that up? Dum-dum. Huh? What are you talking about? A booth? Whoa. Hold the train. I want to get off. So I went from this simple 3 to 4 hour project to I need to have stuff going on for 3 days.
You couldn't just say no?
Well, I could, but they've already put my name up and filled out the banner and have put me in all these flyers saying that come see Chris at the D&D booth. And they've already put they've printed out the flyers, they've printed out the banners, they've put my name on all the merchant on all the things. It's like
not the things.
Sorry. Well, I'm kind of already not realizing that I'm involved with all this, and now I'm kind of involved in all of it.
So is it all of that plus the 30-minute open session?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So on top of my 4-hour block, I don't have to, but I feel obligated to because I kind of stepped in it, didn't realize that it was turning into this until after the fact. So, yeah, it's kind of gone a little nutsy cuckoo.
The closest thing I can relate to that was I did a session years ago at the teachers conference in Texas, and I was it was just a 30-minute session thing, but I made some CDs with some software on it to give out, and this was back when a spool of CDs cost about $75. So I threw my own money in there and burned 100 CDs. Took me days with my 4X writer. That's how long ago this was. And when I get there to go see what room I'm in, they put me in one of the main halls with like 1,600 people, chairs set out, and I was like, okay, well, here's a spool here for the first 100 people who can get up and get a CD. That was the dumbest thing I could possibly have done. I thought people were going to injure themselves fighting over these CDs, and I was like, whoa, everything's online. There's a website. You could just go down, but no, we came here, we want free stuff, and we want it now. So it wasn't quite as big as you, but sometimes the hey, let's just do a thing turns into, oh, you own this now.
Exactly, and that's what this is basically. The bomb was set in my lap with a 2-week fuse. Now I'm trying to mitigate the explosion.
So here's what you do, Chris. You do a running D&D quest for the entire show where people come in and go out, and then you have to have a dungeon master quick enough on their feet to work in this character, and then this character leaves. And then you do the overview, and some experienced players sit down at where that one left off to fight the final bad guy or something. That's what you do. So, everybody who shows up gets some little trinket, but, the experienced players at the end of your presentation they take, they meet this group and help this group beat, Tiamat or whatever level of hell they invade.
So I thought about doing something like that, but because I'm not sure, it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Starts at 10 on Friday, and it's a Saturday, Sunday. So it shouldn't be too big of a deal, but it is there is that holiday on a Monday. So I don't know how many people are going to show up. I thought about doing that. What I ended up deciding to do is, instead of doing a round robin type like you were talking about, Seth, is instead me and my friends have sat down and have generated a bunch of just dump characters. I don't want to say dump characters, but a bunch of generated characters. And so what we're going to do is I have 4 dungeon masters, including myself, that we're going to sit there and we're going to do 3 to 4 people. We're going to run them through a quick little 30-40 minute run during the 3 days, rotating DMs so everyone can have an experience. And then on Sunday, that's when we're going to do the bigger event with the larger map and a larger game session, still doing the same idea that we had, just in a larger, grander scale. Because I don't want to do, because of the scale that this is that I'm envisioning, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of spending, the 50 minutes of just going through spell listing and components and all of that stuff with people that are only going to look at this for that one weekend and then not do anything. So I'm trying to get that spark of imagination. That's what I'm basing my presentation on Sunday, is you don't need to spend a lot of time and money on this. The biggest thing you need to invest is your imagination, because that's what this is all based in.
All right, so walk me through it as a complete neophyte. I know nothing about this. I don't even know the parameters of it. So let's say I'm going to have a weekly D&D night at my house every Tuesday night, and my friends are going to show up. How long is this going to last? Like, is it one game that happens every week? Or is it every week is a different game? And let's say that I'm saying I want a different group of people so that the thing can't continue. How long could I expect a game to last from start to finish?
Well,
how long do soap operas last?
Yeah, that's basically how you look at this. So, depending on how you want to play, the way you want to do your game. Okay, so in general, you could do this either as a one-off night, so you're having a bunch of people over for just a throwaway night, and there's campaigns for that setting. This game session should take approximately 3 to 4 hours. They give you a time limit. in a game, it'll take approximately that long. Then there's the games like where you invade a large scale, a large scale game, which would be like taking on a character such as Tiamat, like Seth brought up earlier. That is a ancient multi-headed dragon that would be a long campaign that you would be spreading out over many, many months, because you would have to. That would be like, I think Tiamat is considered a challenge level of. I think you have to have at least somebody of level 15 to challenge that level.
Okay, all right.
So you'd have to get your characters from a level 1. So
stop there for a minute. What?
Go back to the beginning. So your characters have to level up to be able to hit something that.
You're not hearing me. Where did this lore come? So Tiamat, and the fact that there's a rule that says you got to be a level 15. Where does that come from? Is this something produced? I told you I don't know anything. Is this produced by a company? Is there a Dungeons and Dragons company that invents these characters and sets the rules?
Well, there is a company that started it all. Let me go grab my
TSR.
Is that?
Okay,
yes.
So terminate and stay resident.
I'm really having.
Yeah.
I'm having some bad bandwidth here, guys. Hold on a sec while I'm trying to figure out what's going on, and I'm pulling up my document.
All right, Seth, you know the answer to this question, so fill me in while he's working on his tech stuff.
Okay, well, Dungeons and Dragons has gone through several reiterations since I played. I played the original Advanced Dungeons and Dragons rules, and they're currently up to Rule 5. But in the original setting, there were 3 books. You had the Dungeon Master's Guide, you had the Monsters Manual that the Dungeon Master's Guide would use to have obstacles for you to overcome, and then there was a Player's Manual where you could select from different character types. Some character types were more mental, some were more magical, and some were more brawn. And so, your group of adventurers would form a party of whatever mix of characters they wanted, and then they would be some jumping off part where the dungeon master kind of controls the world. He's built a world for them to go into, and sometimes people have a very specific world made. Sometimes they just kind of make it up as they go along. And within the context of D&D, you can do a lot of things. Like, I remember the group I played with one time, we wanted to have like a poker night. So we had like a little 10-minute adventure to get to a town, and we went into a casino, and then we were playing cards the rest of the night using the gold we had won in the adventure up to that point. So, we could either be broke or rich at the thing. So, yes, there is a company that has books. More experienced players usually kind of modify the books somewhat just to more suit their liking.
So do you have to have this pre-printed material to play a game? Or can I make my own Dungeons and Dragons style adventure?
Usually somebody has some form of the books to base something off of. They do have all of these resources available online, so if you have the PDFs, they're easier to browse through. So, and then there's plenty of online resources as well that if you wanted to just quickly get a schematic of a base system, usually they're called like a D20 system. That's the current. You use certain dice to do your different rolls, damage, attack, skills, or different things, and that tells you based on chance if you successfully did something or did not. That's what the game master or dungeon master is there for. He's the one that says, okay, you want to say pick that lock. Well, you'd roll a dice to see what chance gives you, right? You would roll your dice, whatever the dice roll gives you would say if your chance of success of opening that lock is a pass or a fail. It's all based on a chance roll.
All right. So
if you roll over the chance, you open the lock.
Okay, so Seth, you were talking about the different types of characters. So I've got on my team an ogre, which I'm going to assume is really strong, and an elf, which is really smart, and a mage, which is a wizard. Okay, so and I go into a situation where I need strength, so I'm going to go to the ogre. And how does the game then work? I mean, but is it like a multiplier of my base skills as a character? How is the ogre better at a strength task than the mage?
Okay. Well, Chris, I only know version 1 rules, so I don't want to confuse him.
So every character class or every character has a certain statistic that you pre-roll as your base stat. So everyone has a strength, a dexterity, a constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. You have those on your character sheet that you have when you start the game.
I know you haven't trouble hearing me, but I need to stop and clarify this. So if it's chance every time, what makes one character stronger than another by archetype, or does it not work that way? Does picking an archetype automatically give you a certain boost in points for strength or skill or dexterity?
So what, like in the advanced in AD&D, which used to, you had the box set Dungeons and Dragons, and then you had Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which was a little more wide open. In the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, you would, you have those basic sets, and say if you wanted to be a fighter, then you had to have there were certain minimum levels of certain aspects that you had to have, and then as you advance in level, like you get more hit points, you become stronger, you can deal out more damage. Chris talked about picking a lock, which if you have a thief class that's really good, at level 1 they have an X amount of time an X chance to pick the lock. At level 2, X plus something. At level 3, X plus something. So some character classes are better at certain types than others. So if you're in a a fist fight, you want somebody who's really strong, and ogre would be very strong. But if you're trying to figure out how to get out of a maze, unless the ogre can smash through a wall, you might want somebody with a higher intelligence rating to be able to figure it out. And a thief would be good looking for traps in the maze.
And do people, and we've completely lost Chris now, so we're not just ignoring him just because it's his last show. But so do people routinely play multiple characters, because in a small group you might need get a better adventure that way?
Well, usually everybody plays one character, and that's part of what makes the game interesting. Like one time my brother was a part of a group where they were all magic users or wizards, so that's the only thing they had. So when they ran into people who wanted to fight them, part of the fun was figuring out how to win, because they couldn't stand up and physically trade blows. They had to be cunning and get the right mix of spells to allow them to have a chance against people who would beat them in a one-on-one fist fight. So, and sometimes if the group's really small, then yes, each person will play multiple characters, but usually it works best when each person is one character, and then that's part of the adventure is, if we had that character it would be a piece of cake, but we don't have that character. How can we pool our resources to get this job done?
All right. So I'm comparing this mentally to a game I do know, Axis and Allies, right? So you're going to go bomb something, and if for every bomber you have in your fleet, you roll a dice, that many dice, and you get a certain point, and it does damage. For every fighter, you roll dice, and you have to get a different number. For every tank, you roll dice, you have to get a different number. So is that how the different attributes of different characters works? You roll different numbers of dice, or have to get different levels of dice?
Similar.
Yeah, it kind of
similar to that.
Yeah. So like if you are a very strong person, like let's say for example, in order to hit this one bad guy, you have to roll a 10 out of a 20. Well, if you're a very strong person, maybe you don't have to roll as high. Or if you have a high dexterity, which means you're very fast, you might not have to roll as high. And if you're strong, you can do more damage, because certain types of characters are tougher, and so it takes more strength to hurt them. Some type of characters are faster, and so it takes more speed to be able to catch them.
So, Chris, you talked about the imagination component of it. If I'm playing out of this book that already has the quest and the map and the characters, where does the individual player's imagination come in?
Because, well, like I said, the books, these these books that you would be playing out of are just starter points. So like they're just a way to get the imagination kick-started, because once you get going and you start playing and you're used to the way that these books work, the game master can then start building these worlds on his own and not needing the books to then start these stories, because it boils down to now it's a storytelling of more than just what the book is telling you. It becomes now the dungeon master is playing all of the non-player characters, the NPCs, and the interactions between the people that are being, say, a player, so like you, and the interaction between me as a common bartender, and how we interact, and then how it progresses the story. So it's a communal storytelling, because let's say you're playing a fighter who's a drunkard, but yet sees that he must uphold the law, and he sees that someone's taking advantage of somebody in the corner at a game of cards. So there's archetypes that you have to, you're playing that role as you may be a drunk, but you're still upholding the law.
Okay, so that's the memes I've seen with the chaotic good, the
Right.
lawful good. So if I am a character who is a lawful good, I am compelled to take action in a situation based on the story. Is that what you're telling me?
Similar, yes. And then there's other things that have been added to 5th edition to help players move on, or to give them story, or the I just lost the word, to give players that are not as experienced with role playing things to play off of. Look at my other book here. It would be similar to bonds. So like, I should have got my book when I was wandering around getting everyone off the network. Because they've added some new things that you wouldn't have been used to, where they have done things similar to flaws. Your character has a flaw that, say, maybe as a priesty character, he sees only religious symbols. He sees faith in everything, but yet he's too much of a zealot that he can only accept his God as the only God. That's his belief in his flaw. So when he's interacting with people, that's how you have to, as a bouncing point for how he would interact with other people in this world. And there's lots of different lore when it comes to, then that's up to the dungeon master for the lore, to know the lore. The players don't need to know the lore. It's more on the dungeon master to know that stuff.
So would the dungeon master then be responsible for keeping me from doing something that is outside of my character?
No, because what would happen is, if there is a point in the story where you're, like, let's say you're a lawful good something, and you're starting to do things that are outside of your character's your alignment, that's the lawful good, or the that type of thing, you're starting to do things that are outside of your alignment. You would then start, if your character would be like a cleric or a priestly type, maybe your healing spells don't stop working, or and then the player then might get the clue that, hey, what's going on? Why are my things not stopped? Why are things not working the way they're supposed to? And then the player would then ask, well, hey, what's going on? When you're starting to act outside of what you should be as a cleric. You should be more lawful, or more thinking more of the greater good, instead of slitting the throats because you're trying to take that guy's purse.
And what if there's a disagreement between players? Is the dungeon master God?
Not necessarily. That's part of role-playing. There's always going to be disagreements. It's up to the group as a group to handle disagreements. I've been involved in a couple of disagreements where players fought and have wounded, killed, resurrected, and killed and resurrected other players. I mean, it's all how the players, but the thing to remember is even though you're role playing, you should not take it too realistically, because it's still just a game. And that's where people have a hard time with, is that it's still that there has to be a fine line between this was in the game, not in real life.
Well, you're dealing with, pardon the generalization, but you're dealing with nerds here, just in general. I mean, if you're talking D&D, you're talking nerds, all right? Jocks aren't going to be doing this as a general rule. So nerds are not known for their ability to separate fiction from reality.
Right.
So is this like an endemic thing in the game, where you know, like for example, in the poker world, I know a little something about poker because it's something I enjoy. You know, it's not uncommon to have a drunken fight break out at a poker game, because the kind of people who play poker are also the kind of people who break noses. So is it the same kind of thing where you're going to have some sort of, you know, long-standing personal feud because of a D&D thing, because the type of people who do that are the type of people who, you know, passive-aggressively seethe? It's
possible, but usually, in the rare occasion that I've seen it happen, it usually doesn't get much further than, you know, the slight grudge, and then it's up. You know, a lot of times the dungeon master can have a little bit of play with that, where he can maybe help right the wrong, and maybe rebuild a bridge in that friendship, if it's possible. I've seen bridges get rebuilt and made stronger by role playing. I've also seen it not turn out so well.
So as a general rule, do people pick characters like themselves or unlike themselves?
A lot of times it's what people will pick characters of what they want, that they wish they could be.
Okay.
Is what I see a lot of. I also like to tell people, try things that you've never done, that you would never be able to do, or that you would think that are totally opposite of you, because those are usually the type of roles that are easiest to play. So if you're a book person and you're used to being, you know, nose in a book and reading all the time, you're used to that. It's going to be that's an easy thing to fall into. But being a sword swinging crazy person is a really easy opposite to be too.
So how does being a bookworm work in the D&D world?
Well, because there is some math works to do with some of this. In 5th edition, they've streamlined a lot of the mathing down, so it's not quite so hard. They're back in 2nd edition and 3rd and Pathfinder, the different rule sets. They got really bogged down in the math.
The dumbing down of our culture, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, it was really crazy back in the 3rd and Pathfinder's editions of the rule set. It was like, as an example, last night I had the same discussion with somebody, and it was ridiculous, where you'd have to keep the math circle for an archer. Okay, for us to think of, if anyone who's picked up a bow, it's not terribly difficult to get the idea down of, at this many yards away, it's this type of a shot. This, you know, it's not hard to think of that for a bow. I've shot a bow. I kind of understand how a bow works. In 3.5 and in Pathfinder, there were literally math tables you had to have on hand, depending on what equipment you had. So if you had on your bracers and you had this bow and you had these arrows with this enemy at this distance, you had to have all of those tables in line to tell you how much damage you could possibly do. And it was just a lot of math, and it was not, at least in my opinion, it's not fun to me to have to look up math tables in the middle of role-playing. It kind of defeats the point.
Yeah, and another way where being a bookworm helps is there are certain monsters that certain attacks work well on and certain ones don't. So if the dungeon master says you are being attacked by this, and if you're someone who's a bookworm, you know, oh, that's an undead thing, and has such fire works really well on them. You know, blunt objects work really well on them, but swords don't work so much. So
okay, so I get that as the person, but
right.
What about the character? How does it make the character better to have a character who's a librarian?
Well, they would know that.
Yeah, a librarian might know the history of the area and know that used to, you know,
Wait, hold on, I'm not following. So
Okay.
if I, as the player, know that, don't I know that whether I'm a giant or an elf or a librarian? How does knowing that? I mean, do I get hints if I choose to be a librarian for things that I don't actually know as a person?
If the
Not
DM is
necessarily.
good enough, you could, because like
Yep.
somebody who studies would know the history of the area and know
Mhm.
that in this area there used to be a castle and there was rumored to be an underground treasure vault. And so a librarian would know that, a scholar would know that, but a drunk fighter passing through town wouldn't know to look for it. So
And that's when the dungeon master would do, like, say, I need you to do a wisdom check to see if you remember, if you know anything of this area. So a librarian would have an easy check to do. So you would roll your one of your dice, and if you succeeded the check, you would get handed a piece of paper with the answer that you just asked about, that you were just thinking about. Would I know that information, that lore? That would be a check, a wisdom check. So you would just blanketly ask, would I know if there was anything in this area because of my study time in the library of this area? Can I do it? Can I think on that? And then you would roll your dice. The DM you would say what you rolled. The DM would have some sort of table either in his head or on a piece of paper that he has on what would be a successful roll for that type of a check for that area. If you succeeded, you would get an answer handwritten to you, or depending on the technology level of that dungeon master. Like, um, I'm not going to for this event that I'm doing, but I use WhatsApp to send little notes to the players. If when they ask a question like that, I send a little note over WhatsApp going, um, you know, yes, you would know this because of blah blah blah. There was a hidden temple back here back many years ago. Blah 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 blah, and they would have that answer to their own knowledge. If they shared it with the group, that's up to them.
Okay.
So there are notes directly from the DM to the players for stuff that would be checks like that. There are also times where the DM may do a mass check where he calls for everyone to do an intelligence check, so or a wisdom check, or everyone do a dexterity check because of something that's going on around the whole group, and then you would roll a dice, say what you got, and if you succeeded or failed, something happened. Now, you may not know what happened. You just know that something happened.
All right.
So there's some mystery to it too, because just because the DM calls for a check doesn't mean you get to know what the check was for.
So if my character is a drunken barbarian wanderer, and I walk into this area and I ask the question, do I have any knowledge about the history of this answer? Would, based simply on the content of my character, would the DM just say no, or do I always have to roll to find out?
that is kind of up to the DM, because say
Yep.
a drunken barbarian would need to roll a 20 because he heard something traveling around, but
Yep.
a sage might only need to roll a 10 because he has studied the area and knows where he's going in. So in that situation, being the thinker studier would have a higher thing, but it's always possible that you heard somebody saying at the last tavern down the road, man, I've been searching for that treasure for 100 years, and blah blah blah.
Got
So that
So-
would be
If it's outside of my character, but I get lucky enough, I can still get the information.
You still,
Correct.
you still could get, or pieces of it. You may get a piece of the information. So, Mark, here, I'm going to share something to you really quick, at least to the screen share, so even the people on YouTube will be able to see what we're talking about a little bit if you've never seen a Dungeon and Dragon sheet. So you can see here on the left.
So
this is
each character gets one of these sheets.
Yes.
Okay.
So everybody has, now you can see on the left you have the strength, the dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Those are your base stats. Every roll is based off of them.
What's a saving throw?
Saving throw would be that would be, like I said, a check of some sort. So if it's a saving throw, would be like if it's a say you're getting tripped, a dexterity saving throw, then would be that's a saving throw. There's different. It all depends on what the role is or what the thing is for that you're doing a save for.
So
then,
a good example would be y'all are all standing around a locked chest, and the thief picks the lock, but he didn't pick it right, and so this poison cloud erupts. And
Yep.
and depending on the spell and the whatever and the type of poison, if you make your saving throw, you were able to jump out and tuck your head good enough to not take any damage. If you rolled like a 1, then you fell into the cloud and took double damage. If you were off by 1, you only caught a whiff. And so, and there's not one saving throw. There's a lot of different types of saving throws depending on the situation.
So so the dungeon master has to be able to have all these things pre-planned throughout the quest.
Not necessarily pre-planned, but be agile enough in thinking to be able to pull some of this stuff off on the fly. Because no matter how good the DM is in pre-planning what the night's going to entail, the players can do something totally different. As an example, my game that I'm running right now currently, I pre-planned them to be going in a certain path in this graveyard that I have all of it planned out, the whole shebang, all the way from the opening of the graveyard to where they're supposed to get to, and have I literally breadcrumbed the whole path with, this points to this points to this, that type of, because there's some little kids playing with them, and I wanted to make it pretty obvious and pretty easy that this is the path that we need you to go. Nope. Not even close. They didn't even make it to the graveyard. They totally went a total different direction and went down a different street in the town into the sewers. So I had to be agile as a DM to, on the fly, spin a totally different direction and spin the story so we could continue going and not try to railroad them into the thing I had planned that night. Because then it's no longer a communal story, it's me forcing the story, and that's no fun.
So is that fun for you to make up stuff as you go?
It can be. There are times it really makes me have to just but it kind of keeps you on your toes because you never know what's going to happen. And as a player, most of the time you don't realize that happens. With a good DM, if he's at least, I don't want to say with a good DM, with a DM that has experience under their belt, and they realize, this isn't going to go the way I'm ready for. They start spinning their wheels ahead of time because they see it happening, and they're ready for it before it happens. And that comes with time, which is why those prefab books that I was talking about earlier, that's why those books are there, because they help teach a DM and a player how the game is structured and how those things are, how to be intuitive and how to see how a story is built. Because a lot of times we don't realize how a story should go until we've already reached the end of a book. Like the what is it? The theory of a hero is not. It's not right.
The hero's journey.
Yeah, that's it. The hero's journey. A lot of times, most people don't realize that they've read the hero's another hero's journey until they finished it and went, well, it was just another hero's journey book. But yet they were lost in the story until the end, and then they go, but I've read this type of book already.
Because they're all that book.
Yeah, right. But yet we still read them over and over and over because we enjoy the story. And that's all these things are. It's you're just spinning a story, but that's the fun comes in because you're playing it with your friends. And you're enjoying an evening with your friends and communally generating a story. And there's times that your friends get on your nerves and they don't do what you want them to do, but they're people. That's the way things work. So, and I personally, I love role playing. I've done it since I was little, and I'll probably do it till I die. It's one of those things that it's a guilty treat of mine. Yes, love.
I didn't hear what she said, but maybe it was just for you.
She says I love it so much because I already know the ending of the story, basically, because I'm the DM. But I get to share the story with everybody around me.
Seth, have you ever run a game like that, or have you always been a participant?
Usually I was the participant, but occasionally I would DM. So
which side do you prefer to be on?
I prefer to be the player because it's more fun to me to be the player because I like to experience it rather than shape it. My oldest brother, he was better. He could play good, but he was much better as a dungeon master, setting up and controlling and kind of herding people along. So he could play really well, but he was a much better DM. I could DM okay, but I was a pretty good player.
And that's
back in the day.
And that's you'll know which side of that coin you're on when you start playing. You'll know within a couple. I would say, as long as you have a decent DM with your first experiences, I would say you would know within the first 2 or 3 sessions of playing, and then running a game 2 or 3 sessions, you would know which side of that coin you fall on more often than not. Because it's a different, when you're running a game, it's a total different mind frame than playing it. And most people that are DMs, they enjoy being a DM, but there's times they just want to play. So all you gamer groups out there, I'm sure there are a few listening, let your DMs play once in a while. They'll thank you for it. Because you get burned out too.
Yeah, the group that my brother ran, I would say over 20 or 30 sessions, he would be the DM 15 times. And usually his was a contained, it was the same people running the same characters, building them up. But when somebody else would DM, everybody would just generate characters, and then it would just a throwaway story. So, it wasn't continued, or it might just be a couple of weeks, and then they were done with it. So, and again, that's more who is the person doing the DM as to what kind of story it's going to be.
So let's say I'm a listener, and I've been listening to this for about 45 minutes now, and I still don't know whether this is for me. How could I know, short of doing it, right? Because it sounds like it takes some effort to get started. How am I going to have a good sense of if I'm the type of person who would like this? What type of person likes this sort of thing? Chris?
I would say if you're a theater person, you're going to love this. If you're somebody who is a theater guy in school, you're going to love D&D. Pure and simple. This is right up your alley. If you're one of those mastermind people, you're going to love being a dungeon master.
What about just as a player?
That's the theater person. If you're a person who likes theater and likes to assume a role, and you like that, I'm going to be that snooty, then you're going to love this, because you can be that snooty person for that hour or 4 hours. And in that 4 hours, you're that snooty little jerk that no one likes. But then at break time, when you guys are no longer in those roles, you're their happy, lucky self. That's the cool thing about role-playing, is if you get in a good group, or you find a good group that does that, man, it makes it awesome, and you'll have some great memories with those groups. And I would definitely say, to stop for a second, just to bring it down for a half a second before I lose it. If you want to go see a decent group, go take a listen to Critical Role over on Geek and Sundry. Those guys are amazing. Matt Mercer does a wonderful job as a DM, and you will understand what Dungeons and Dragons are. Those guys are amazing. And he does a couple hours with Vin Diesel on YouTube at D&D. I think they call it D and Diesel. Definitely worth a couple hours to listen to those guys play. It's hilarious. But anyway, back to it.
I had lunch today with Matt Mercer. Probably not the same Matt Mercer, because I doubt he knows what Critical Role or even a podcast is. But hey. So,
Interesting.
Seth, same question to you. What kind of person would you say you ought to be a D&D player?
The mechanics that go into fantasy football are the exact same mechanics that go into D&D. There's some people who just, do a draft pick. I want this guy, or I want this team. I want that team's offense, this team's defense. As granular as you want to make fantasy football, you can make Dungeons and Dragons that way. So fantasy football is the jocks realizing the geeks got together and had fun more often than them, and they wanted something to come along. It's the exact same thing. It just uses different terminology. But if you are someone who is a fantasy football fanatic and you are listening to these reports and say, oh my gosh, I heard this guy might be injured. I need 17 points in the third quarter or I'm going to lose, so I'm going to bench this guy and blink. I mean, dude, you would love Dungeons and Dragons.
So see, I'm an auto draft, and then at Saturday night around 10:30, remember to fill out my roster kind of fantasy football player. So I'm probably, based on that equivalency, I'm going to be a casual D&D player at best.
You would be the kind of guy who somebody hands a generated character to and says, this is you. And, and says, okay, I'm a fighter. I have a sword and a shield. Okay, there's a monster in front of us. I'm going to go attack. But, the cunning guy, no. So, you would be the casual D&D player.
So I would be the casualty? That's what I think you just said.
Well, I mean, definitely not into it.
Well, he might, though. I could see Mark as a guy who would get into it if he had a good guy to spin the story. Because I think that's the key with with getting anyone into D&D is someone who can spin a good story to get, because you like a good fantasy novel, Mark, right?
Yeah, I like sci-fi.
Right. So something with you're not a sorcery and shield type guy.
Right.
You want a good sci-fi. So D&D probably not for you. You would be more a cyberpunk guy with technology and that type of thing. So D&D not for you, but cyberpunk, that would be your Shadowrun would be the thing that you would probably get into, and you'd be like, yeah.
So there's a TSR game that came out at the same time D&D called
Shadowrun.
Gamma World. You would love Gamma World because it's the same mechanics as D&D, but it was set in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Yep. So, there weren't like ogres and trolls. There were mutated humans and animals, but it was the same kind of game.
And there's also a post-apocalyptic world that does zombies. So if you would be one of those guys that likes to be a survivor horror, where you get to try to survive a zombie apocalypse. I just lost the name of it. Oh, it was right there. Nope, it's gone. But there's plenty of those type of games. Shadowrun was a big one too. They've kind of fallen out. They're not as big and popular now. Shadowrun. There's also the Vampire the Masquerade was a big one for a long time. They're kind of making another swing back up as being popular. And all these different games, they all have similar rule sets. So once you learn one rule set, you could probably drop in and play them all. Very, very similar rule sets. They're just different ways of playing. A werewolf-based one. There's ghosts. Name something. There's going to be a role-playing set. You just got to find other people to play with. That's the problem, is finding other role players.
All right. So if I happen to be near the rolling plains of Glendive, Montana, in a couple of weeks. How could I learn more about Dungeons and Dragons?
Well, there's lots of resources out there. The one thing I will always point people to, and it's a kind of an interesting place to go to besides Wizards of the Coast's website, but there's an online resource that everyone that has a gaming system built into it called Roll20, and I think it's roll20.net, and it's a place that you can go. You could sign up. You can join a game, a simple playing game, and actually it's more like a video game, but you're role playing with other people all over the world. They have all the rules. They have all the books. They can see it right there. That's one place to go to. If you're in the Glendive area, at the end of September, or end of August, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, come see me at SuperCon. It's at in Glendive. I'll be in the booth with D&D. Otherwise, you can check me out on Twitter.
That's at the Eastern Plains Convention Center in Glendive, Montana.
Glendive, Montana.
315 South Merrill Avenue, if you just happen to be in the area. For me, it would be about, according to Google, an 8-hour and 40-minute flight, costing me $1,000 round trip. So I'm probably not going to be there. But if you happen to live a little closer to southern Canada, that's where you could go see Chris in all his glory.
Yes, but definitely, at least take a look into playing role-playing games. It's something that I think everyone should at least try.
So is this something that could be done asynchronously, or do you really need to be, online or in the same room at the same place? I mean, do people play these types of games via text or email or that kind of thing?
Not really. You kind of have to do it either face-to-face or in a Google Hangout. There for a while. Google Hangouts were being good until this Roll20 system turned on. You really have to either webcam it or something, because you kind of have to see people to interact with people.
So, because the reason I asked that is going back to Seth's fantasy football thing. That's a lot of thing that happens asynchronously, making decisions in your own space, and then you see what happens. But it seems to me that this is where you really need to be sharing the same, experience.
Yeah, and yes and no. I have seen places that do it asynchronously. It's just it takes a different mindset. It's not the same thing to do it asynchronous, to do it that way, to do it via text. It's still role-playing, but it's a different type of role-playing.
All right. Seth, do you have any thoughts?
No, I mean...
Other than you're hungry and you want this to be over?
Well, no, I mean, it just... D&D is more... It is a world, and just like there are millions of things to do in the world we live in, there are millions of things to do in D&D. You can make it about killing monsters. You can make it about solving puzzles. Like I say, one time we had a poker night doing it. One time we ate in character. So, usually when you play D&D, you go for a couple hours, and then there's the break where everybody gets something to eat and you come back. But one time it was you had a meal in character in a tavern. Mm-hmm. And so, occasionally the Dungeon Master would be a non-player character that walked over and did something. So it's very varied. It can be very fun. It can be pointless. It's very easy to go overboard. There's an old movie called Mazes and Monsters that could very easily happen if you let it. But it is fun for the right kind of person, and it's danger for the wrong kind of person.
Yes, very much so. And the fun thing is if you got a good group of friends and you sit down and you have a good time, you'll have memories, and you'll have those friendly jokes where you'll be like, I can look at my friends and be like, remember when Kazar did that? And everyone else, we like, who the heck is Kazar? But I'll say that to, any of my friends, and they'll all look at me going, oh my goodness, you don't mean, and then we'll all bust up laughing. And Kazar is a completely made-up character. He's on paper. But we have immense amount of experiences with that particular person that persona, I guess would be the best word for it, because he's that memorable of a persona that I pulled out of my hat
How long have you been doing this, Chris?
since I was 15. We'll just leave it at that.
Seth, you've retired, but how long were you active in it?
I started at 7, and I went to my early 20s.
So both of you have a decade and a half of experience. How long does it take to really find your footing?
My 6-year-old started and is now playing a pixie and is absolutely loving it. She's 7 now.
I think you can be playing it the first night, but I would say after about your 5th session, you kind of get a feel for it, because and then it just depends on do you want to read the? I used to just read the player's handbook and the monster manual and the DMG for fun, because we only had the ABC, NBC, and CBS and PBS when my dad made me climb up the ladder to turn the antenna. We've talked about that before, so I love to read. But anyway, so a couple of months, and it's something that you should probably only do once a week. So after a couple of months, you can find your groove. But like anything, if you want to master it, you probably need 6 months before you would even think that. And you wouldn't be a master, but you would be someone who was very confident in what they were doing.
Yeah, I would say, that would be in the old edition, Seth. In the newer edition, I would say even less than that. I would say within a couple hours, you would have a pretty good clue on how to do. If somebody asked you for a roll, you would be like, oh, that's this dice. Within a couple hours, you'd have a handle on what you're doing, because they've simplified it that much. It's now pretty quick.
So if I go find some local group doing it, and after the first 4-hour session I hate it, is it fair to say I'm not going to love it ever?
Well,
or does it have to grow on you?
I would say try it a couple of different times with different people, because that first time you're going to play it, if you don't know the people you're playing with, you're not going to like it right away, because you're not going to feel comfortable with that group. Because that's in my opinion, that's the biggest key, is feeling comfortable with the people you're playing with. I would say go out, find that your comfortable group of friends, pick up the starter box. It's like $25. It comes with 4 pre-generated characters and a basic walkthrough. Sit down and walk through it. Have everyone change roles. There's a fighter, a mage, and a thief, and a dungeon master, and I think there's something else. But for $25, you've probably wasted more money on a movie.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any questions I didn't know to ask? What have we not covered?
Not all dice are made the same.
So there's a difference in quality of the dice?
There is. And that is an easy one. It's something that can happen. Don't be discouraged. Cheap dice are cheap dice. Expensive dice can be cheaply made.
And so what makes good dice versus bad dice? Like, you notice it always hitting 7, or what?
Well, you'll notice it'll be, there's ways to see if how they're rolling. That kind of takes some of the fun out of if they're going to be a high rolling set of dice or a low rolling set of dice. But if you notice that you're constantly getting low rolls, I mean, like religiously, you're noticing this one dice is always rolling crappy. It might be worthwhile to replace that one dice, and they're not expensive. So, you can pick up a single dice, like a D20, for like 25 cents on Amazon. So don't be afraid to replace a dice if it's a consistent low roller, or even a consistent high roller. You want it to be as random as possible, and the solid colored dice it's easier to hide flaws in a solid dice than it is a clear one, in my experience.
Of course, random.org is never wrong.
Sure.
That's true. No, we had a D20 that we used so much it became a ball. It was literally just a ball with no and the numbers were kind of well you'd have to we wore the numbers off, and then we had a D8. I remember it was green, and it became a cylinder. So, I mean, we freaking wore those dice out. Fun times.
So I'm still
Fun
waiting
times.
for the D20 to stop rolling. Still waiting. Still waiting. It's rolling. It's still rolling. Oh, it rolled off the table. Somebody run it down.
Yeah,
pretty much. And you didn't pick it up. Everybody got down and looked to see what it was.
Yep.
So. And then eventually you would get the shoebox and you would throw it in the shoebox so it would just rattle around in there. But that's a rookie mistake that somebody who's played would figure out.
So I mean it's one of those things. Don't be afraid to buy more dice. They're cheap. Retire them when it's time.
How cheap is cheap?
Like $6.
Okay. Per dice? Die?
Set.
Okay.
Set of 8.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's no excuse to deal with a rounded off D20 if they're 75 cents a piece.
That's the dice that's been there as long as the group has. You wouldn't abandon a group member when they had problems. You're not going to abandon your dice just because they get old. That's part of the fun. I mean, I don't know.
But
maybe
you can also spend as much. I mean, I've seen dice that are, I picked. It was gifted a pair of $50 dice. A set, machine metal. I have yet to even roll them to see how well they roll because I'm afraid that I'm going to find out they roll horrible because then I'll never roll them. But they're so pretty. There's some really nice looking dice out there, and then there's the really nice looking dice that are really bad rollers. So it's like I don't even want to know if these roll bad because they look so nice.
And sometimes that can be a punishment for a DM. There's that bad set of dice. And if you did something out of character or out of alignment, the DM took your dice and gave you that one. And then he didn't have to tell you did something wrong. You figured it out and you straightened up. And, so it's just, again, if alignment is important, or one of the magic users would curse you because you did something and you would have to play with the bad dice. So, just there's ways to.
I'm going to remember that.
Fun times.
I forgot about that one.
You just brought up, player on player violence. Are you not always in it together, or can you be, a group of people with each of you has a single mindset? How does that work, or is it different?
How do you want it to work?
Yeah.
Sometimes if you get the group together and say everybody contributes $5 and whoever gets the most money, whoever's collected the most gold at the end of the adventure collects the pot, then it's not a team effort. It's everyone for themselves. But if it's if everybody doesn't make it here, all of you have contracted the plague, and in order to survive, everyone has to get to this thing, then you don't want to lose this character you've spent years developing. You're going to make sure everybody makes it. So that's part of the fun of the game is it's varied, and sometimes every man for himself. Sometimes you got to stand up for the other people.
Or sometimes you, as a DM, purposely implant a person that is nefarious, and they're your mole, and you feed them information and then have them turn on the group when it's right for the story. And then if the person does turn, like you've asked them to, great. If they don't, well, now you have a story plot that you can pivot off of for later.
Sounds an awful like an awful lot of work.
Oh, but it's fun. It's fun because you're able to do things in the game that you can't do in real life, especially as a DM, because you can manipulate the environment in ways that you can't do in real life because it's against the law.
But, Mark, part of the reason it sounds so hard for you is because you're not familiar with the underlying system. If you've DM'd for a while, you can have these charts made beforehand. The group's wandering along. You roll the dice. Like this happened. I remember this game constantly because my brother made it so fun. We were just going along this prairie, and the dungeon master, my brother, was rolling to see what we would encounter. And he kept rolling herds and flocks. So we would see, a group of birds over here, a thing of deer over there. And so finally he's like, okay, I know what this herd is going to be, because he would roll and he kept turning up this way. So he's like, I'm going to make it a stampede. So all of a sudden we were stampeded by a herd of like basically buffalo. I don't remember the exact animal. And we had to figure out, because it doesn't matter how strong you are. If you get trampled on by a few hundred buffalo, you're going to die. So we had to figure out how to survive through that. And, somebody got the bright idea before it was too late to build a fire. And, because the buffalo would naturally part and not run through the fire. And we all stood behind the fire, except for the weak guy who they tried to throw over, and he only got hit by stragglers. So,
See?
but, so it's just, because he was just doing random stuff, hey, you encountered a dragon, but it was like you encountered a herd, so it was like a flock of birds, and he's like, what am I going to do? And then he had this idea on the fly to make it a stampede, and then we had to go, crap, what is that heat waves in the distance? So, somebody kind of used a spell to like levitate up and goes, it's like 1,000 cattle and coming at us, and we were like, we're not in a forest. We're out in the middle of nowhere. What are we going to do? So, we tried blasting them with a fireball that made a hole, but the hole closed up because, so we couldn't shoot them with arrows. There were too many. We had to figure out what to do. It was fun and challenging. And all of a sudden, being, having your 1800 strength and able to pick up one bull and throw it 50 feet doesn't work when there's 100 right behind it to trample you.
Yep, and my favorite story about D&D is it involves losing a character, and I always like to bring it up because it involves when me and my wife were playing together, and it was one of the best DMs I've had. My wife she picked up a sword that was possessed, and it possessed her, and so her character had a wand of magic missile that she was using as her main weapon. And we were in the middle of at the bottom of a dwarven hold, which is at the base of a deep mountain, very deep mountain. And so she picked up this possessed sword, and the sword, because she was possessed, she had no control of her character. The DM then controlled the character. And the long story short, she basically, in breaking the wand, it basically detonated the nuclear bomb at the base of a mountain, so the mountain imploded, killing, out of the party, only 2 members survived. But it was just that whole story of how that all happened and how we lost the whole party, but a paladin and the paladin and the thief who made it out because of a bunch of skill checks getting out of the mountain. It's an amazing story, but I always poke fun at her that she imploded a mountain because she picked up a sword. It's funny, and it's fun, and she always gets all red in the face because that's also the campaign that she angered an elder druid and burned down half a forest.
So when you lose a character, what do? You go back and roll up another character?
Yep. In that particular one, that particular night, I lost 2 characters because of poor choices. So I was in the game system that we were playing, and at that time, Seth, it was in 2nd edition, so I'm not sure how familiar you are with 2nd edition. It's a punishment, basically, to have to roll up a new character because it takes so long. I spent, in that night, because I had my original character that I lost because of the mountain falling in, and my second character that night I lost because of poor choices. So by the time I finished my 3rd character of the night, the game session was over and I couldn't even play him.
So does that carry over to the next time?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yep. Yeah, well, the DM, because we all basically had to re-roll characters that night because everyone all but two of the party was wiped out, and it was just luck of the dice that those 2 even made it out. So, it came down to the way the DM played the story and how the dice interfered with the way, because he wanted the whole party to be wiped out. The DM was trying. That was the whole point of him. When we hit the bottom of the dwarven hold, he didn't have a way for the party to get back out in the story. So he was just like, I'm lazy. I don't want to write a way out of this. So whoever picks up the sword is going to end up killing the party, one way or another. And they ended up succeeding, getting out, and so now he had to end up making more work for himself, having to rewrite or to write a new story now with these two characters. It was just kind of a funny happenstance that chance ended up making him have to do more work.
That sounds fun, I think. I'm not really sure. I'm not being sarcastic. Well, maybe a little. But truly, I don't know. I can't decide whether this sounds like fun or sounds like torture.
If you're part of the group, it's fun. But otherwise, you're sitting around going, let me know when you finish, guys. I don't think I'm going to try whatever that software is.
Yeah, it like I said, it depends on your group. It depends on the I would definitely say if you can find somebody in the area that is willing to try to DM, and especially if the person who's willing to be the DM is one of those guys who can be, it helps if he's very has a big personality and can do multiple characteristics and has his hand and talks all over the place, and because they're usually that type of people that can draw people into the conversation and suck people in. Those type of personalities. Everyone knows that type of personality. Those are usually the ones that are really good storytellers. Those are the ones that usually make the best DMs because they can bring people into the story and suck them in. That's what you need as a DM. And then the ability to spin the story as you go is definitely worth it. But yeah, it's a skill, definitely a skill, but one that can be learned.
I liked watching the Saturday morning cartoon in the 80s, if that means anything. Might have even been the 70s.
No, it was the 80s.
It was the 80s. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna call it here because I get the feeling you two could tell stories all night long.
We could.
And I don't think anybody wants to listen to 3 hours of it. Well, if you do, that's the next podcast. It's Seth and Chris's stories of You Had to Be There.
I would say go to Critical Role and enjoy their stories because they have episodes. I think they're at 60-something episodes of D&D stories. But they're active. They're an epic level. I think they're at a level 12s of their characters. So they're pretty far into their characters already. And they're superheroes more or less. So it's kind of fun listening to those characters being built and played, and it's fun.
All right. Okay, so this is the part of the show where I tell you how you can contact us, and don't write me to tell me that this was a boring show. This was Chris's last show, and it's what he wanted to talk about. So suck it up. Don't write me to tell me that you want more of these because this was Chris's last show. So sorry.
Again, suck it up, Buttercup.
elementop.com, click the Contact Us button at the top of the page. That's the best way to get in touch with us. Fill out the world's hardest CAPTCHA, fill out the form, and let us know what you think. You can dial 559-IMOP, leave us a message on our voicemail, and we'll play that. Or you could do like Rick did and just send me a file, and we can play it. So there's options all around. We truly like to hear from you. What do you have to say? What do you think? What do you like? What do you don't like? Also, we covet your ratings and reviews on whatever system available. Now, having gotten the business out of the way, Seth, what happened this week in history?
All right, this is a pretty cool one. On August the 28th, 1991, so we're talking 25 years ago, the first email sent from space, using a Mac portable aboard the Space Shuttle Atlantis, the first email from space was sent to Earth. Two astronauts on the spacecraft, James Addison and Shannon Lucid, wrote, "Hello, Earth. Greetings from the STS-43 crew. This is the first Apple link from space. Have a great time. Wish you were here. Send cryo and RCS. Hasta la vista, baby. We'll be back." The message was transmitted to the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. That happened this week in history. Actually, this day is of the recording, August 28th, 1991. Interesting stuff.
Very cool.
Yeah, email hadn't been around a whole long time hadn't been super public, right? So email was invented late 60s, I think, because it's been around a long time, but it really came to the general public's notice in late 80s, early 90s with CompuServe mail and that sort of stuff, using a portable Mac. So what would that have been? Would it have been the clamshell case in '91? Probably. That sounds about right.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
With Jeff Goldblum saying there is no step 3, connected to a telephone modem. I don't know how they made that work, but that's how they communicated back then. Fun stuff. This week in history. And now, moving right along, Seth, do you have something to make my productivity lower so that you look like a better hiring option in the work market?
Man, this has the potential to cause massive, massive layoffs. So if there's a crash in the technology sector, we know we've won. LittleAlchemy.com. This game, it's not a game, it's a website. It's freaking cool. So if you go here, littlealchemy.com, it loads, and then you click play. And then so over on the right hand, you start with air, earth, fire, and water. So you drag earth out there, and then you drag fire on top of it. Boom, you've made lava. So then if you add air to lava, you come up with stone. And then so you add stuff, add different chemicals. And if you look at the bottom left, you'll see there's a total of 560 different things that can be made. I am currently up to 30. So you can get wire, you can get bullets, dynamites, bricks, sand, glasses, mirror, all this kind of stuff. So even gunpowder. It's telling me to make a plant. I haven't figured that out yet. So, but anyway.
Add water to earth, I'm guessing?
Nope. That makes, I think, mud. So, anyway, it's just littlealchemy.com. Go there and see what you can combine. You can get energy, electricity.
Yeah, so I now have made a brick.
Mm-hmm.
You adding water to earth, and then fire to mud. And so now if I add mud to steam, I get nothing. I made an earthquake. What happens if I add steam to an earthquake? Nothing.
I made a geyser. So
how'd you do that? Energy to steam?
I've already made plants and grass.
How did you make plants?
Don't tell me. Don't say. Because I'm stuck there. I'm trying to figure it out.
Oh, you can make, if you add water to water, you get a sea, and keep adding water, you get an ocean. Yeah, interesting. What happens if you add fire to the ocean? You get salt. If you add energy to salt, you get nothing.
Oh, I made a beach. Oh, sweet. Oh, that's awesome.
If I add earthquake to salt, what happens? No, nothing. I can't figure out what to do with an earthquake. I made an earthquake, but I don't know what to do with it.
I got a pretty garden.
Oh, wait, if you add earth to earthquake, you make a tsunami.
How'd you get an earthquake?
Fire and energy. I mean, energy and earth.
I don't have energy yet.
Okay, yeah, you're right, Seth. This could totally cause...
This reminds me of another game that you can get on your phone. It's Demigod, I think is the name of it. It's a very similar game where you start combining things to get other things. Yeah, there's a couple of different games just like this for your phone, which makes it even worse because you can sit there and play it for hours.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you guys talk amongst yourselves, and I'll be here.
So cool. Anyway, I came up with this. I thought, oh, wow, this is freaking awesome. So, yeah, I've got 35 things so far, and...
If you add air to steam, you can make a cloud. And if you add cloud to earth, you get fog. What happens if you put fire on fog? Nothing. How about if you add energy to fog? This must be great to listen to.
I'm sure.
Are you stuck? Need a hint? Okay. What happens if I get a hint? I'll have to buy hints.
Oh, okay, so that's how they monetize it. But anyway, so there you go, and it appears to be a cookie or something because if you close and come back on the same browser, it picks up where you left off. If you go to a different browser, you're starting over.
if you take human and human, you make love.
Okay, I haven't made a human yet, so
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
don't
listening. Blah, 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 blah. But anyway, littlealchemy.com, pretty cool.
This is fun.
I
Okay.
think we're broken.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're doing a show, aren't we? Yeah. I could have been doing this the whole time you guys were talking about D&D. I should have looked ahead. How do I start over?
I'm sure there's a cookie or something, but you can just open it in a different browser.
Oh, if you hit the recycle button at the bottom, it starts over.
I did not see the recycle.
Oh, but
button.
you still have stuff. So
yeah, so I'm sure there's a cookie you can delete. Clear your cookies, son.
Don't save positions in the workspace.
You had air to air, you get PSI. You had PS.
Okay, stop it. Don't tell me. Stop it. I'm going to keep talking anytime you say something.
I created atmosphere.
Man, stop it.
Okay. What happens if you put fire in atmosphere? Nothing. Okay. If you put a brick in atmosphere? Nothing. Okay. Okay, I got to get out of here so I can play this game. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody.
Do it at work tomorrow, Mark.
Oh, Little Alchemy. Gosh. I wonder if this is mobile friendly.
I did it.
Mark, like I said, there's a mobile game already that does that. That does this. I'll link you to it.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
I had to take it off my phone because of
this. This seems like it was a fun thing, and I learned a lot about D&D that I didn't know, and hopefully you did too. I can assure you that Chris had a good time with it because he was just grinning from ear to ear the whole time. So we got to send him out on a high note, so we're glad about that.
It was great fun.
I just wish to want to say, thanks for so long and thanks for all the fish, Chris. I don't really know how to say goodbye. You'll be back, I'm sure, at some point, and because nobody ever really goes away. You'll get bored at some point with family and wife and blah. And you'll want to come back and waste some time podcasting. So the door is always open. You're welcome to hang out with us. You, the listener, of course, are always welcome. You're the reason we do this show. And we look forward to seeing you next time because that's it for this episode of the GeekRant.
Bye.
Toodles.
Sorry to hop in late, guys. Was on the way to dinner with the family when I got the message that the cast starting. Sorry I missed it live. We'll catch it later.
Does the EDL email still work, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to get the email about the thing that's like this for the phone.
Okay.
You're welcome. You'll hate me later for it.
Rick said, pulled up the cast on my phone during dinner, and Chris was talking about D&D. Had to laugh when I got home, and you were still on D&D. Figured Mark was thrilled. That was the whole show, Rick. It was all about D&D. And then about Little Alchemy. What can I do with this atmosphere that I've created? Gotta be able to do something.
Okay, stop talking. Stop talking. I'm not listening. Stop.
I just don't know what to do with it. Oh, I made dust somehow. It was a total accident.
I wish I'd give you a hint, like it would change different colors if you rolled over something that would be something.
Oh, I made a wave? All right. I made sound.
I made dew. Ooh.
I don't know what to do with sound, but I made it.
Tobacco. I made tobacco.
Oh, you made a plant.
Oh, I've had plants for a while. I made tobacco, though.
This is ridiculous. What if you add energy to sound? What do you get? Nothing.
Make fire tobacco. Nothing. I should probably stop the audacity.
Yeah. All right. Bye, YouTube people. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next week.